Come here. I've come to the haunted woods of Kennel Vale in search of some of the scariest creatures around. 8-legged beasts that carry their young in a sack made of their own skin. Animals with rotating mouthparts. Come on, get down. I'm Seb Thompson. Today's episode takes us to some of the most terrifying places imaginable, enough to strike fear into the hearts of any who wander these forests. Moss. Welcome to Nature Watch.
Mosses are easy to overlook in a world as busy as our own, but the remarkable evolution of these plants allows moss to be found almost anywhere, from scorching desert to Arctic snow. A large part of their success, and the reason we've chosen today to look at them more closely, is their remarkable ability to hold water. Mosses, holding onto a thin film of water, make a brilliant ecosystem to support a tiny world, invisible to the naked eye. This minuscule forest supports the equivalent of all the flora, grazers and predators seen in our macro world. So let's explore this often forgotten universe. This is a rotifer. It's a tiny animal, 2 times smaller than a grain of sand, yet it has a primitive brain, digestive system and jaws. Rotifers feed by rotating 2 bands of cilia, hair-like structures that produce a vortex of water to direct food particles into their mouths, more or less the microbe equivalent of taping a vacuum cleaner to your mouth. You can see the movement of water around the cilia here. Rotifers also have a foot that can be used to attach themselves to surfaces, with some species forming colonies thousands strong. Rotifers perform a vital function to these ecosystems, eating bacteria and dead material, recycling the nutrients into the environment. They're also remarkably good at dying, and are food for many micropredators. Tardigrade's cute chubby appearance has led to their affectionate nicknames water bear and moss piglet. Tardigrades are found almost anywhere, but they're especially happy feeding on moss. In many species, pregnant tardigrades will lay their eggs in their shed skin and drag it around with them until their eggs hatch. We couldn't find any moss piglet mothers, but we did however find a shed skin, full of abandoned eggs with sadly no mother in sight. Perhaps the most interesting thing about tardigrades, and the reason for their celebrity status in this tiny plane of life, is their remarkable ability to survive even the harshest of conditions. Tardigrades can change their bodies and shrink themselves down to create an incredibly resistant form called a ton, in which they orbit impervious to any number of extreme conditions, from extreme heat to the vacuum of space. Tardigrades don't like being in extreme environments, they can simply tolerate them. Tardigrades aren't immortal by any means, you just have to get the jump on them. Water bears are known to survive up to 30 years with no water in this state. In 2019, an Israeli lunar lander carrying these resistant forms crashed into the moon's surface, sparking debate over whether or not these tardigrades are currently surviving on the moon, or whether they died in the crash. One study investigated this by blasting tardigrades out of a gun into a wall at 900 meters per second, and they could survive. Are water bears the first lunar invaders? Some of the most complex microbial life is that of annelid worms, another animal group also containing earthworms and leeches, featuring repeated, segmented body sections filled with fluid, spawning complex nervous and digestive systems, as well as a closed circulatory system spanning their body. Annelids move through a process called peristalsis, where 2 sets of muscles allow for contraction and elongation to squish and stretch the worm forward, similarly to the way our intestines move food. While annelid worms may move with some finesse and grace, nematode worms have no such elegance. Nematodes only have 1 set of muscles either side of the worm, leading to this clumsy thrashing motion. This one here can be seen feeding on a piece of moss and making it look about as difficult as it possibly can. Unlike annelid worms, nematodes are non-segmented and molt their outer protective layer to grow. Nematodes are everywhere in the micro world, and have adapted to almost every environment. Nematode worms were found in a South African gold mine 3.6 kilometers deep underground. Ciliates are tiny single-celled predators, zipping around the microscopic world eating almost anything, from bacteria to plants to consuming entire organisms alive. Many ciliates, along with other protists, house photosynthetic algae inside of their tissues that provide extra energy from sunlight. Billions of years ago, cyanobacteria developed the ability to produce energy using sunlight. Around 2 billion years ago, however, something remarkable happened. A protist ate our cyanobacteria, but instead of digesting it, it let it live and reproduce inside the protist, taking some of this energy in exchange for shelter and resources. until the bacteria became incapable of reproducing on its own, allowing for the evolution of photosynthetic algae. These cells within cells are the principle of endosymbiotic theory. The smaller the scale you look, the more the lines between organisms living together like this blur. Humans host mitochondria. The organelles that we use for respiration were once free-living bacteria before being incorporated into other cells. Humans also live closely with other microbes that can influence every corner of our existence. The sheer scope of this tiny world is something to behold. Microbes inhabit every surface of our bodies, from our eyes to our digestive system. They're on your skin before you wash it, and they're on your skin after you wash it. Everyone has a unique microbiome, a microbial fingerprint of your very own and specific only to you. And this community may have more influence on your life than you might realise. But before you go full Macbeth and helplessly try and scrub your hands free of your microbial partners, your microbiome is incredibly important to your own health and well-being.
Will these hands never be clean?
One of the most important parts of our microbiome are our gut microbes. Microbes in our digestive tracts can help us digest food, build strong immune systems, and take up space that blocks harmful microbes from setting up shop. But our gut microbiome can also influence our brain and behaviour. Over millions of years, these microbes have evolved to communicate with our brains. It's thought that these microbes are responsible for producing up to 90% of our serotonin, the hormone associated with mood stabilisation and happiness. An unhealthy gut microbiome has been linked to depression, obesity, and a whole host of mental health issues. The food we eat determines what microbes live in our gut, and they can communicate with our brain to reward eating certain foods. What this means is that with eating unhealthy foods like fatty chips or fast food, we breed microbes that tell our brains to eat more unhealthy foods, making us crave foods that are bad for us. The opposite is true for healthy food. The foods we choose to feed our microbiome can shape our minds. Our microbiome can influence our emotions, desires, and mental health. It's so intertwined with our lives that it becomes difficult to determine where the line is between our microbes and us. Are we truly in control of all our actions, or are we being manipulated by our microbiome into acting a certain way? Would you be a different person if you had a different microbiome? In some ways, they're as much a part of us as any other. The number of microbe cells in our body are 10 times greater than our own, with bacteria being found in the large intestine in the same concentration levels seen in a lab-grown petri dish under ideal conditions. Are you different from your microbiome? Are the microbes you harbour separate organisms, or are they as much you as your own cells? Is a human being your own flesh and blood, or a whole community of organisms working in their own best interest? Do you feel hungry yet?
Thanks for joining us on this special episode of Nature Watch. They say you are what you eat, but perhaps more accurately, you are because of what you eat. Happy Halloween.